How far would you be willing to go to protect the things and the people that you believe in? That's a question posed by the story Snitch by Charles Williams. The story follows the pastor of a black church as he navigates the decisions around what sorts of moral sacrifices he's willing to make for the greater good of his community. Importantly, this pastor is making these decisions in the context of a broader system of oppression, in a way that, on a small scale, reminds of the acts of people like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr., which were two civil rights activists that took very opposing paths on how to fight systemic oppression of their communities. On one hand, like Malcolm X, you might argue that making moral sacrifices for the greater good is necessary. This is a very utilitarian perspective, utilitarianism being the philosophy that argues that you should make choices that basically maximize well-being for the greatest number. On the other hand, the decision maker in this story is a pastor, and at the end of the day, you would assume that someone like that cares quite a lot about their moral character. If he was to follow a philosophy such as Aristotle's virtue ethics, then what matters more than the outcome of his decisions and the greater good that may be able to justify them from a utilitarian perspective is actually the character that you exhibit in making those decisions. Ultimately, it's about how your actions and intentions affect your character. And then when we're talking about political philosophy in this light, Hannah Arendt argues that violence might dismantle power, but it doesn't create it in the long term. So you might use violence, or in the case of this story, corruption, in order to dismantle an oppressive system. But where does that violence and oppression end? How can we contain that slippery slope? So does the greater good justify morally questionable actions?